Some treasure maps are drawn on parchment. This one was hammered into metal, as if whoever made it needed it to outlive fire and empire and time itself. Last time we followed a golden chest out of history. The Ark of the Covenant, carried through the wilderness, enthroned in the great temple of Jerusalem, and then, on the night the city burned, simply gone from the record. No inventory, no boast, no final chapter. But that story left a door open, because the conqueror's ledgers have more than one gap in them. And 20 centuries later, in a desert cave above the Dead Sea, searchers found what may be the strangest treasure document the ancient world ever produced. This is the story of the Copper Scroll. To understand it, you have to start a few years earlier. In 1947, in the cliffs above a ruin called Qumran, a young Bedouin shepherd chasing a stray animal tossed a stone into a cave and heard pottery shatter. Inside those broken jars lay manuscripts that had been sleeping for 2,000 years. The world would come to call them the Dead Sea Scrolls. And almost overnight, those cliffs became the most famous archaeological hillside on Earth. Expeditions fanned out, checking cave after cave, racing rumor and the antiquities market. And on the 14th of March, 1952, at the back of the cave the catalogues now call Cave 3, an archaeological team found something that did not belong. Every other scroll from those caves was leather or papyrus, ink on skin, words meant for a library. This was metal, 2 rolls of thin, corroded copper, green with age, lying apart from everything else. The catalogue gave it a cold little name, Item 15, Cave 3, Qumran, 3Q15. History gave it a better one, the Copper Scroll. And then, for nearly 4 years, nothing happened, because the scroll could not be opened. Time had transformed the copper into brittle oxide. Try to unroll it, and it would shatter like a dead leaf. So it sat under glass, while scholars could do nothing but stare at the curve of the metal, where, pressed through from the back, they could just make out the ghosts of letters. A message, plainly visible, completely unreadable. The answer came from an unexpected place, a college of technology in Manchester, England. A professor of mechanical engineering named H. Wright Baker built a cradle to hold the scroll, and a circular saw with a blade thinner than a fingernail. Through 1955 and 56, he cut the rolls into 23 curved strips, pass after pass, knowing that a single slip of the blade would erase words no one had read in 2,000 years. The strips were cleaned, photographed, and laid side by side. The scholars leaned in, and what they found was not scripture, not prophecy, not hymns, not law. It was a list. 64 entries, terse, practical, almost bored, each one a hiding place and a quantity: gold in a cistern beneath steps, silver by the count of talents, sacred vessels in a courtyard, no story, no warning, no prayer. The scroll reads like the notebook of a man who knew exactly what he had hidden, and where, and saw no reason to explain himself to anyone. Then you add up the numbers, and the numbers stop sounding practical. Taken together, the scroll describes roughly 4,600 talents of precious metal, by weight, tens of tons of gold and silver. Some modern estimates put the value north of $1 billion. Numbers like that are guesses dressed up in arithmetic. But even the cautious reading describes one of the largest treasures the ancient world ever wrote down. And the final entry, number 64, may be the strangest of all. It points to one last hidden item. Not gold, a document, a duplicate of this very list, it says, with fuller explanations. a key, hidden somewhere else. No one has ever found it. So the question stops being what the scroll says and becomes the question every treasure story turns on. Whose fortune was this? And was it ever real? Here, a careful narrator has to slow down, because the experts have never agreed. One camp says, this is temple treasure. The timing fits almost too well. Most scholars date the scroll to around the year 70 of the Common Era, the very year Roman legions broke Jerusalem and burned the Second Temple to the ground. In that reading, priests saw the end coming and scattered the sacred wealth into the wilderness, cache by cache, then etched the record in copper, because copper survives what parchment cannot. A second camp says the treasure was real, but it belonged to the desert community at Qumran itself, the sect many identify as the Essenes, the pooled wealth of a movement that shared everything. And a third camp, including famously the very scholar assigned to publish the scroll, Yosef Milik, concluded the treasure was never real at all, a legend written in inventory form. Folklore, with numbers. The scroll itself refuses to settle the argument. In 70 years of searching, not one cache from the list has ever been verifiably recovered. But here is what we do know, because the conquerors bragged about it in stone. Walk through the Roman Forum today, and you pass beneath the Arch of Titus, raised around the year 81. Carved in its marble, Roman soldiers parade the spoils of the fallen temple, the silver trumpets, the table of the showbread, and held high above the crowd, the great seven-branched lampstand, the menorah. That carving is a receipt, cut in stone. This we took. And then the menorah, too, slides out of history, melted down in some later crisis, say some. Lost in the Tiber, say others. Carried off again when Rome herself was sacked. Every claim that it survives somewhere today has one thing in common. None has ever been verified. The pattern repeats. The more sacred the object, the colder the trail. Which brings us back to the copper list, because if the scroll is what many scholars believe, a hiding plan made on the eve of catastrophe, then it is the other half of the Arch of Titus. The stone records what the conquerors carried away. The copper may record what they never found. One man decided to go and look. John Allegro, brilliant, restless, controversial, was on the original Dead Sea Scrolls team, and the copper scroll became his obsession. In 1960, he published its text ahead of the official edition, and parts of the scholarly world never forgave him. Then he went further. He took the scroll into the Judean desert and dug cisterns, ruins, tombs. The expedition made headlines around the world. It turned up nothing. His critics said he wanted the treasure too much to read the text coldly, and that has become the scroll's first lesson. This document has a way of making careful people reckless. Why has nothing ever been found? Probably because the scroll's directions are keyed to a world that no longer exists. The cistern under the steps, the old washer's house, the second enclosure, those were landmarks a person could walk to in the year 70. They are dust now. Without them, or without that missing second scroll, the one with the explanations, the most detailed treasure map antiquity ever left us points everywhere, and nowhere. Today, the copper scroll rests in the Jordan Museum in Amman, sliced into its 23 strips, green and fragile under glass. Anyone can stand in front of it. Anyone can read the numbers. 2,000 years on, it is still doing the only thing it has ever done. Calmly, precisely describing a fortune no living person has ever seen. And one more thing, remember where it was found, not buried in a vault with gold, but shelved in the dark among books. Cave 3 held the copper scroll alongside pieces of the greatest manuscript discovery of modern times, a hidden library in the cliffs, scripture, prophecy, the secrets of a vanished community, sealed in jars against the end of their world. If the copper scroll is the strangest page in that library, what about the rest of it? Next time on Anytime Stories, the Lost Relics, the library in the cliffs. Who hid the Dead Sea Scrolls, and why? And how does their story tunnel forward in time, beneath the ruins of the temple itself, where 1,000 years later an order of knights came digging,